one more area of importance that sort of has become prominent in the last 5-7 years has been foreign policy and how we deal with sort of our neighbors and how we deal with external threats. Let's just put it like that, right? How would Kautilya conceptualize foreign policy, or how we deal with our neighbors? Is there something specific he says?
So I told you about the Mandala theory. That is one of the theories, and he says that your main large countries with whom you share your borders are likeliest to be your
which is true for us,
enemies. Which
literally.
Is sort of true for us
literally,
as well. So your rivals, the guys you want to keep track of, are the countries with which you share your borders. Therefore, your natural allies, per the Mandala theory, would be the people who are on the other side of it.
Right.
So today it would be, on one side it would be Japan, on the other side it would be Afghanistan, Iran,
right,
Tajikistan,
right,
things like that.
Right.
So, I mean, obviously it's not a hard and fast rule. I'm just giving you how that schema would have worked in his...
And at this point, borders have been separated. So like if China and India are in friction, America, who's obviously also in friction with China, sort of becomes an ally.
So it needn't be literally the literal border, land border. It may be in terms of
conflict of whatever
conflict of some sort. It may be the other side of whatever you're in conflict with.
Right.
So your enemy's enemy being your likeliest friend is a part of the Mandala way of thinking. So you have to remember that Kautilya is essentially a realist. So much of what he says is basically practical rule of thinking. So for example, even on taxation, he states that, he gives these very interesting analogies. He says, the way you tax must be in the way a honeybee collects pollen from a flower.
So without destroying the flower.
Yeah, you collect what you need to, but the flower itself should not be destroyed. So there are many things in Kautilya where he lays out these principles. And then having laid out the principle, which many of these principles are still valid.
Right.
And then he for his own times, he will then tell you, okay, this rate of taxation is good for this.
Is there a difference between direct and indirect taxes for in Kautilyan tax?
No, it's mostly direct tax.
Okay.
Indirect tax.
So on sale purchase.
It's on sales purchase, but there is direct tax on cultivators.
On cultivators, as in the agriculturists.
Agriculturists. They're a share of whatever. The king gets a share of what is grown.
A tithe.
Yeah.
Is that what it's called?
I'm not tithe. Okay. I'm not certain whether that was what a tithe was.
Okay.
But it certainly is the case that the king has a share of what is grown on his lands.
Fair. Tell me, economically, and I've understood a little bit, right? With infrastructure development and limited state with some economic incentives, it sounds like a classic capitalist. Like it sounds like an Adam Smithian sort of approach to things.
Yes, although he did not probably have a conception of distribution of resources based on an invisible
hand.
Yeah,
right.
So I don't think he was thinking in efficiency terms.
Right.
He was merely reflecting how business is done in those times. India has always been a very capitalist society in that sense. Merchants have existed from Harappan times, Bronze Age, and so on.
Yeah, we've been trading through.
They've been trading throughout. So he takes it as given that a merchant-based system is what artisans and merchants are key to the economy.
Right.
They need infrastructure, but they also need to be regulated. So he's very much clear that, there are rules, metrology rules about weights, measures, rules about what happens if somebody cheats.
Okay.
He has rules about lending and what is considered a reasonable interest rate. What happens if somebody defaults.
Okay.
And so on. Who is supposed to pay if default? What happens? And so on. So there is a whole bunch of things that he talks about. What happens to inheritance? What happens if somebody goes away and disappears? After how much time can
the inheritors claim it?
Inheritors claim it, or even a wife can remarry.
Okay.
So, there are all kinds of many other things that are there and you can see his thinking process, mostly quite pragmatic. Once you accept his realist frame of reference,
yes,
he's basically pragmatist. So he has traffic rules.
Right.
So he has rules about what happens if a bullock cart misbehaves. then very small children are not allowed to run a bullock cart, so there's a age cutoff. What happens if
That's
so
funny.
all
You're
kinds
not allowed to drive a bullock cart drunk. Like that's
yeah, stuff
probably
like
not-
that. So he has these kinds of rules. I mean, I don't know if he has that specific rule.
Yeah, right.
But it would be quite in character for him to have these kinds of rules, and then specifically say so many coins, copper coins, panas or whatever, have to be paid if this. If he does drunk driving.
Very interesting.
I mean, as I said,
Drunk riding in that
drunk
case.
driving or whatever. So he has all these kinds of rules, fines for doing blah blah blah.
ब्रदर, ये क्वेश्चंस और ये पॉडकास्ट सुन के आपके भी दिमाग के चक्षु खुले ना, सो subscribe to this so that you can watch our podcast in small bits and clips while you are busy and wasting your life away.